I wonder if Micah commented on the one that I shared? Did anyone comment on the one you shared?
No, I didn't get any comments.
Micah says The Matrix, the spiritual realm, the pros and cons, technology in the modern age, life's purpose, solutions for ending world poverty. This is like all things we've already talked about.
So technology, though, I have an interesting conversation that we can have about that.
Okay. Oh, we can just read these two and
and then we'll just
pick ones we want.
We'll be like, nope, you're dumb. But then this one, okay. All right. Hello. This is
going?
The final Cowboys and Unicorns podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Dan.
And this is somber. We're just somber out here. Not really.
How sad are you, Dave?
I think I'll be more sad once it's done.
Once it's done?
But at the same time, we haven't been doing it consistently, so it's not like it'll feel any different.
Right.
I'll just call you and we'll just talk, but it won't be recorded. So
yeah, maybe we should say why we're...
Yeah, we probably should.
Doing it.
Dan broke up with me.
So I called David and he didn't answer, and I broke up with him via voicemail.
It sounded very familiar to a breakup that I once had via a voicemail.
Yeah.
It was,
So I gotta, just like a couple sides at the beginning.
I think that this just isn't a priority for either of us. And I met someone new. No.
I'm starting a new podcast.
It's not me, it's you.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, neither of us, this podcast, if you've been listening or hoping to listen, and there has not been any podcasts, obviously we don't have time for it.
Yes.
We live in different places. Dave has 1.5 jobs.
Yes.
A child, a wife.
And a CrossFit addiction. And I've got stuff to do too. No, just make it sound like bad on you. Yeah. Dave's just...
No, I have a new job. I live in the Twin Cities now, and
And a Snap.
I have a Snap Fitness membership that I go to reasonably 4 times a week.
Oh, come on.
And a novel to write. So yeah, I've got stuff. I'm sorry, Dave. I was slamming you on the podcast.
It's all me, guys. Let's be honest. We'll just come out and say it. Someday, when we're older. Cowboys and
What is it?
Unicorns.
Discomfort over uncertainty?
Choose discomfort over resentment.
Discomfort over
I'm not
resentment.
very good at it still.
See, I think this whole year you've been talking about that. I'm like, I think I'm already good at that.
Yeah, you are good at that.
I'm like, I can't do the podcast anymore.
Yeah, you're like, Dave, because you won't choose discomfort over resentment, I'll just do it for you. So here we go. So yeah, podcast ending. We have some parting questions that 2 people submitted.
John Tiernan and Micah Baker.
Thank you very much. Tomorrow I'm going to be on the Anxiety Wad podcast.
I'm getting a little cross promotion here.
Yep. So
who runs that?
Corey Schmidt-Gall.
Was on episode 9 of Cowboys and Unicorns? No.
Yeah.
7 or 8.
Yeah. So he started his own podcast to basically answer questions and help people who struggle with anxiety. And so he...
I should check that out.
Yeah, might be good for Dan. It's kind of funny because I don't really struggle with anxiety that much, but it'll be fun to be on it. Like, his podcasts are going to be more short form, so they're like 30 minutes at most, and then more specific on like just answering 3 questions that people submit. So we'll be talking about...
Are you on it?
Yeah.
You're doing it with him?
We're recording it tomorrow, so it'll be just 1 episode.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to be a guest.
I was like, Dave does have a new podcast lover.
No. I told him I was depressed, and he was like, all right, you can come on my podcast.
Dave moves
for
quickly.
An episode.
I was going to wait like a year until I started a new podcast.
Dad and I are going to start conflicting podcasts and try and one-up each other. I'm going to have Joe Rogan on mine.
I'm going to start like why anxiety is great and will help you achieve all your goals in life.
Just press into the anxiety. It's so good for you to have nervous poops all the time.
Right.
That's what I think of when I think of anxiety. Is like
Really?
right before like a test or right before like you have to go speak in front of people and you're like, that's the kind of anxiety that I feel like where like I get short breath and I'm like, oh, I have to poop.
Dude, I have to poop anxiety, to me, that's the good anxiety.
That's like the only anxiety that I really feel.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Like
that's the...
So it's the
like,
worst kind.
Like, or like before like a sporting competition?
Right.
Do you get
like that type of thing. Like before competition.
I used to get that all the time in track.
Yeah.
And it was great for running because you're just lighter. Because you're just amped up for it and your system starts moving faster.
Yeah, as long as you get that anxiety and then you have time. But the worst is when you're like, oh crap, but I got like 3 minutes and I don't have time for that. You
time for what?
For your anxiety poop.
Right,
so then you have to like go do your whatever. Well, prairie dog thing. Anyways, so question number 1.
Oh,
what do we? Okay.
From John.
Well, John's first question was the deep web pros and cons. We're white boys from rural Minnesota.
I feel like that's actually a good can.
We don't know anything about the deep web.
I don't know about the deep web, John. So
if you need an assassin or something, that's what
I'm going to ask John.
Go there for
if he's been there.
Right. Like, what are his? How do you get there?
I've Googled it before. I don't think you can get there by like a regular web browser.
Probably not.
Like you can't go on Chrome and get to the.
You have to like go through IE, through a VPN, and go to like some like it's like toysrus.net, and then you click on this special link, and then you put something in your cart, and then suddenly you're in the deep web. That's how I like to envision it. Anyways,
seems legit.
Yeah, we
sorry,
don't know
John.
the pros and cons. Sorry, John.
Nothing about the deep web.
I forgot to research.
We're against
illegal activity,
hard drugs, and the sale of people or organs.
Yeah, the objectification of people.
Yeah, we're against anything that's illegal.
Probably most things that you'd find on the dark web, we probably... it's just a con. It's one big con. Probably.
There might... Well, we don't know because there probably is some... There might be like some revolutionary, like, anti-authoritarian... Like, what if you're like...
Or like
I'm
a way
to sound an idiot, but like, let's say you're a part of some authoritarian government,
yeah.
and the only way you can communicate with like the revolution, like the people who care about freedom, is through the dark web. Then it's probably good.
Yeah. Or like maybe you need some type of medicine that you can't get any other way because you're gonna die. Maybe you can get it.
There's no pharmacies in where you live or something.
Right. I don't know. So yeah, sorry, lame answer, but that's what we got.
What is time?
Yeah. So.
I had a conversation with John about this like 3 weeks ago or something. And I was saying, I don't know what John was saying exactly. So I'm not going to speak for him, but obviously he's still thinking about it.
Make up something stupid about it. Like, yeah, John's just an idiot. He thinks time is based on how fast turtles move.
Right. So I think time is just and so the question that he first posed to me was in relation to like time travel. Like, can you go back in time or can you go forward in time?
Okay, yep.
So, and I was thinking, no, because isn't time just us measuring like how planets move? And so to me, it was like, it doesn't, like, no one says like, what is an inch? Like, it's just a unit of measurement. And so to me, time seems like it's just a way to measure movement of like planets.
And I think you're right. Like, basically, we made up time to quantify, like, okay, so the sun goes down at this time, and the sun goes up at this time.
Right.
Like, obviously, when the sun and the moon go through a full cycle, you're repeating a process over and over again. So then that time measurement is...
Do that enough times and you look different.
You count to 60 a lot of times, and voila. Okay, it was 24 hours. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I'm just noticing that, like, the change in all the things that change over.
Right.
So things are changing. So why are they changing? Or, like, what is happening that's...
Right.
Not
like
that...
aging and seasons. And
right.
All that stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything scientific enough to really be like, my profound input on time is this. I've never thought about it.
Well, one thing we talked about is, like, I said, well, if you could go back in time, if time is a movie.
Yep.
Right? Like, but I was like, that. I think that to me gets a little Calvinistic. Like, God created the heavens and earth. Press play, start a movie.
Sure.
And then there's an end, the predetermined end by somebody who made the movie.
Right.
Or God made the movie or whatever. So then you could conceivably go forward and backwards.
So is the question also, like, do you think that it would be impossible to go backward or forward in time?
Yeah, I think it's impossible. Because I don't think it's a movie. I don't think it's predetermined. I think we don't know.
But I mean, you can rewind a clock, right? Like, going forward in time, I think it's a little iffy because it's things that have never happened yet.
You can't rewind a clock. What does that mean?
Like, you can literally twist back the time on a clock.
A clock is not time, though. Clock is a thing that measures what planets are doing.
Right, but I feel like
that has nothing to do with...
You could potentially go back in time.
How?
There's technology
that
doesn't exist yet. But I think that it would conceivably be possible that at some point in the next thousands of years, somebody will figure out how to go back in time. Going forward in time, I don't think. Because, like, it's something that's never happened. Like, there's no...
So the other idea that I heard this on a podcast, and it reminds me of stuff Seth Nelson used to say in Bible studies. Seth's a smart guy.
Go Seth.
But Seth used to talk about, like, maybe, like, everything happens at the same time. Or, like, relative to eternity, it's happening at the same time.
Okay.
Maybe that's the podcast thing, and I'm just saying Seth said that. But his idea was, like, if eternity exists and time that, like, David dies... Let's say the idea is we go to heaven someday after we die. David dies today, and I die in 10 years.
Okay.
But because in relation to eternity, it's just like David died, and then like a half second later, Dan appears.
Right.
Because
and it's like
1,000 years is a day.
Dan, you died with me, and you're like, no.
No, I actually died 10 years later, and I did all these things because it's like outside of this other realm called eternity where time doesn't exist.
That's an interesting concept.
So then... That's the only way it makes sense to me that you could go forward or backwards is like basically it's all happening.
Relative.
Experientially, there was a yesterday, but somehow, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me because I have a very Western linear way I think.
Right. I'm just, based on nothing, I think at some point it's possible someone could figure out how to, in a sense, turn back the clock on their 24 hours and be like, oh, hey, I'm redoing yesterday. Or then they'll make that technology. Maybe somebody already has, but then they jumped all the way back to the dinosaurs and then they got eaten by T-Rex and voila. Like, oops.
Right.
You figure out your technology. You have it. You don't tell anyone because you want to test it out. You die to a dinosaur. No one ever knows.
I mean, wouldn't the people that love you know?
I mean,
the thing is, if you go back in time, are you still existing in the present moment?
Ooh.
Do you have to duplicate your consciousness?
Interesting.
So you get in the machine.
No, I think that you literally, you'd be leaving the current present time and space.
Your physical body.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So if I go in the machine, it's not like I go back in time, but we could look at the machine during the experience and say, like, well, Dan's body's still in there.
Right. See, they have, That
almost makes more sense to me, though.
Yeah, that's interesting. Basically,
we put you in a tube.
Then you're just saying, you're kind of like, your consciousness is going back. Which then that would seem like you could only go back in your own experiences that you've had. That's almost more like just like...
Unless we hook it up to the internet.
Right. unless you hook it up to everyone's smartphones and all the cameras, and then it's like, okay, now you can piece. You can't go down that alley because there's no camera. We don't have any sense of what happened then. I don't know, but they have figured out like teleportation on a very small level.
What is that? What's teleportation?
Like jumping you from here to point A to point B.
Who figured that out? What?
My sister's boyfriend is a super scientist guy, and he talked about like they're doing it like with molecules, but like
will they like sequence you forward or something?
Right, where like literally the molecule gets all broken down, and then in a sense it gets rebuilt on the other side. So it comes down to this weird predicament of it's technically not. Well, it's being recreated to be exactly the same makeup. It's a new molecule on the other side. So then the weird thing you'd get into if this ever got to humans is you would basically die, but your consciousness and all your makeup would get transferred to like this place in Africa, and like you'd get recreated. You'd basically be in a whole new body, but it would be the exact same.
So, like, you want a hot dog from a certain restaurant in, like, New York City.
Right.
So you get yourself there.
Right.
But then you're, like, 99% the same person, and
right.
then but the new person you are doesn't want any hot dogs. And now...
See, but that's the...
It's like the new person's like a vegan. It's like one...
Right.
And you're like, I don't know why I'm here.
Right. Or, like, over time, if you do that enough times, does it, like... Yeah, could you like 1% fall off through that time? Like you get rebuilt, but then like you get somebody else's 1% and then you're a serial killer.
Right.
Like, yeah. So that's weird, but I guess that's not relative to time.
Well, I'm sure there's got to be something with time too.
Yeah.
We're not smart enough to speak to this. But I mean, this sort of just brings up the question of, isn't that already happening? Because if you think, like...
Mind blown.
No, not already happening like in a physical, like, being beamed somewhere. But, like, you're not the same person you were 5 years ago. And time, like, you moved forward in time.
Right.
And you'll probably be different in... It's different because you...
Right, it's weird. You'd get into like I'm sure, especially like some religious groups, right? So it's like, what happens to your soul? What happens to you if technically, like, you're basically dying and you're getting recreated on the other end as like you are Dan, but you're not actually the Dan. Like, if I touched you, it'd be new, a whole new genetic, like,
right.
whatever, makeup.
Material.
I don't know the words. Yeah. Yes.
I don't know.
Which then, would that, like...
But don't you, like, shed your skin every so often or whatever, and you have brand new skin?
Yeah, that's, like...
Like, if you, get new muscles, like, you're, like, growing.
Yeah, but that's a way different than, like...
Yeah.
You ceasing to exist for the snap of a finger that it takes to teleport to... New York, and then suddenly you're like, here I am. I don't know. But it probably will never happen. I don't know.
Right, but when you say you, who do you mean? Because
I'm just saying, like,
because are we both in agreement we're not our bodies?
Right, but like you entirely would probably cease to exist for the time that it takes for you to transport from point A to point B. That might be like a millisecond. But you wouldn't have conscious thought. Like, you're like dead here, and then you're suddenly alive, rebuilt here.
Right.
So like in that...
Do I have conscious thought while I'm sleeping?
Like if that machine like malfunctioned in the middle, you'd be like stuck in, broken into millions of tiny pieces.
Right.
And maybe you'd never come... I don't know. It's weird. So time is
Have you
based
ever been
off
under
of
like
the-
anesthesia? Did I say that wrong? Anesthesia?
Anesthesia?
I think I gave an extra.
I don't think I actually have.
It's kind of weird. I got my appendix taken out, and it was not like an emergency.
Yeah.
And then you go under, and I don't know. It's kind of weird to think because you're like, I think you get pretty close to death and surgery, like on a technical level.
Yeah. I mean,
Like not like an actual danger level or whatever, but
right.
like there's, I don't know. It doesn't seem like you're dreaming or anything. Like you're pretty not there, and then you're there.
Right.
Because you were saying like, well, you won't be conscious for a little bit while, and I'm like, well, I feel like I've had that experience before of not.
See, but you'd cease to exist for a little while. That's the weird thing. That's different than being like medicine making you...
You're saying physically cease to exist.
Right. Yeah, who knows what your consciousness would do while you're transporting through that, I don't know.
So this gets into a little bit of like what Micah was asked, like talk about the Matrix, talk about the spiritual realm, which is another question.
Yeah.
Is like, is there a me outside of my body? Or not outside, but besides the hardware,
right?
Is there and if I'm including the brain in the hardware.
Yep.
Is there a software me that, like a spiritual consciousness, whatever you want to say, like a spirit or a ghost or a software or a awareness?
Is there a being like
that's not the nuts and bolts, including my brain?
See, that's weird when you get, like, not including your brain.
Yeah, but
because based on everything we understand, like, all of your thoughts, everything is stored in your brain.
It's weird, but it's also not weird. We're sitting in a church right now where I think that's the premise of most of... that you have a soul or a spirit. A soul is...
Right.
To me, that's interchangeable. I don't know. Yeah. Some people say that's different. The idea of a you.
Right.
If you believe in an afterlife, you have to believe in that, right? That there's a you besides.
Yeah. Right. That you will continue on once your flesh and bone body is dead. Yes.
It's interesting, like you say, when you talk about the brain, though, because it feels like, to me, like everything's happening in my brain.
Right.
But then, like, I wonder if Corey will get into this, like, in the anxiety podcast, but some people who talk about, therapy or trying to, I don't know, be more zen or observe what's happening and change it, they will talk about, like Corey posts stuff about, like, don't believe every thought you have.
Right.
Or you can... Like, I'll say this, like, if you struggle with, like, a bad thought pattern, or, like, anxiety or OCD, or any sort of problem you have, you can go, like, oh, my brain isn't helping me right now.
Right.
Like, who is that saying?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Who is going,
yeah,
oh, this isn't working? Is it my...
Right.
Is that also my brain recognizing other parts of the brain that are malfunctioning?
Right.
Like, who is that saying,
yeah,
oh, look at how I'm thinking, this is dumb? But that's also a thought.
Right. Well, and like the scripture, right? Take every thought captive, yeah.
So who is taking the thoughts captive? Who's in there behind the eyeballs saying, this machine inside of me is not functioning, and it's not, the way it's working is not going to give me the result of the output that I want on an emotional level, on a physical level, on a XYZ.
Right. Is
that just your brain, or is that the real you?
Right.
Tell me, David. I want to know.
We're talking about things that I've never really... Like, I don't know. I'm kind of one of those people that it's like, I don't know. The world is as it is, and I just live in it, and I don't usually take time to be like dive into what is time, or... do I exist outside of my brain? Like, I've never thought about this. It's like hard to even grasp. But
are you sure we're not just putting it in different language? I feel like we have thought about it.
That's true. Well, yeah. I mean, like, I've thought about the mindfulness stuff, like the mindfulness practice, like the okay, like step out and try to observe your situation without. But that's more, the concept there is more to say detach your emotions, right? You're telling yourself a story because you're tying all of your emotions into your thought process. And it's saying, step back and think about it analytically and just look at the details and what actually happened versus looking at it and be like, oh, like, Dan didn't say hi to me at the grocery store, therefore I tie in like, oh, we haven't talked in a couple weeks and he's mad at me, la da da da. When you do it from like that mindfulness analytic side, you're like, Dan probably didn't see me, or Dan's busy. Like,
right, take in more variables than the fixation that you're...
Right, your emotional reaction, your insecure, like, all that stuff.
Your emotions in your brain are like, oh, this is the one thing that matters. This is the only thing that could possibly be happening.
Right.
Whereas you can take a step back and, yeah, right.
Right. So, yeah.
I think it, like, part of me goes like, yeah, it's all my head. Like, that's me. Like, me lives up here.
Right.
And then it flows to the rest of my body. But part of me hopes, like, I hope that it's not. I hope there's, like, right. I don't want to die. I don't want
to be I mean, like,
I don't want to die and be done. I want to die and
right.
I want,
right.
I want eternal life. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I want to die and live forever.
Right.
And still be like, I used to be in that meat sack on planet Earth.
Right.
That went to Snap Fitness and not CrossFit.
Yeah,
and
that's
now
why you're not as cool.
I'm in CrossFit because I'm in this.
Because I'm in heaven, and I understand
right.
that CrossFit is the heavenly fitness place.
What if you get to the next place though, and they're like, no, heaven's the third one. We're in Narnia.
You're like dying, and you're like
you're
floating into this wardrobe, and you're like, what is this place?
Everyone in Narnia is like, we sent you the clues. C.S. Lewis, geez, guys, you missed it.
Oh my god!
And then they're like, yeah, no, heaven's still real. You'll go there after Narnia. But
right.
We have to do Narnia first.
Everyone starts like at the lamppost, and Tumnus like comes walking out, like greets you.
It's just like, it was not that hard, guys. And
you should write a book about that.
And then,
like, that would be an interesting concept.
I don't think I'm good at fantasy though. So I would probably.
I mean, you just came up with that idea out of nowhere.
Yeah, but somebody already came up with Narnia.
Yeah, well. Shut up. Yeah. So the Matrix.
You could write a blog post about it, I feel like an essay.
It would be interesting. Like, see, that, like, I just don't even think about those types of things. I'm just like, life is as it is. I'm pretty accepting of it.
That's good.
I don't know. Okay, so what was John's last question? It was...
Oh, what is the ultimate goal in life?
Yes.
It's a super existential podcast.
So...
Does it vary around the globe? I don't even think you have to go around the globe. Just go next door.
I think that... I mean, like, at its base level, right? It's like... love and belonging, right? That's Brené Brown. I'm just stealing Brené Brown. But, like...
So my guru says...
Love and belonging is, like, the baseline. Like... To be valued, to have relationship, I think is the base, no matter what. Then when you get into cultures, you get different nuances. But I think at its base.
Keep talking, I'm going to look something up.
Right. So I think at its very base, like, purpose of life around the globe, like, no matter what culture, no matter what subset, like, all of us, our fundamental drive, our fundamental desire is love and belonging. That's my thought. I'll go with that.
So ultimate meaning, like,
the thing that, like, whether we're conscious of it or not, all of our actions, all the things that we're pushing towards, that's really what we're trying to fulfill.
Mm-hmm. So, if you've heard of, like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I kind of like that because I think sometimes we've already reached a few of the levels.
Right.
And so love and belonging seems like
Like super basic and not really something.
No. It seems like next, because you're like, all of my basics, like survival needs are met.
Sure. Yeah.
Because part of me goes, some people don't have the luxury of sitting on a couch and wondering about these things.
And being like, hey, love and belonging is what I really want. Because they're like, I haven't eaten in 5 days.
Yeah. It's like the bottom physiological needs: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction.
Yep.
Safety needs: personal security, employment, resources, health. They have love and belonging third. Oh man, they didn't have it. They got it right in the middle.
Okay.
Friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection.
That's fourth? Or that's
No, that's love and belonging.
Yep. Okay.
And then esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength.
Okay.
Boy, it does seem like love and belonging should be above that. Well, maybe that's more essential.
Right. Yeah, I think...
you probably don't need respect.
Yeah. Right, because...
Or status or recognition or strength.
Right.
And then the top one... Yeah, maybe the last two are like for rich people or something. I don't know.
Right.
Self-actualization. Desire to become the most that one can be.
Right, because if you don't need any of the fundamentals to survive, then you're like, okay, now what can I do to pass on a legacy to be...
Right. And you probably need love and belonging in order to go after...
Yeah, if you don't...
Self-actualization.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't have no friends or intimacy or sense of connection,
yeah.
You're probably not going to get to and then it became all that
or your unhealthy way of trying to get to that self-actualization is like blowing people up.
Right.
Because you're like, no one loves me, so I'm going to...
What do you do if you feel like I have love and belonging and you're 26? You're like, I have...
You've arrived. It's all over.
Sometimes
I think that's the fundamentals, though. That doesn't mean that...
But he said ultimate goal in life. Maybe I'm reading into that, saying that that's something that exists when you're 50s or something.
Or like something that you're always pursuing, right?
Yeah, and I'm saying you could be a baby and have love and belonging. Hopefully you do.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Maybe it's harder to get it as you grow up and you become more jaded. I don't know.
Right. I mean, I don't think that in this world, you probably ever will be fully satisfied by the level of love and belonging that you'll get, because it's always going to be given and reciprocated through, like, broken people. Like, it's never going to be a perfectly healthy example of...
So I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Because I agree with that. Does that mean... When we say broken, like, the people who are loving us are broken and... Or not. Maybe they're not broken, but they're flawed.
Self-serving or whatever, yeah.
Right.
Fundamentally focused on more that
they're human, let's just say.
Yeah,
they don't... they miss the mark. They're not...
Yeah.
They're not evil.
Not 100% perfect all the time.
We're not saying, like, our loving wives are trying to, like...
Yes.
We're just saying they're humans.
Yes.
And so, a human who has the intent to love perfectly still will make mistakes most weeks.
Yep.
Probably every week. They're not going to meet all of our needs or just do it right.
Yep.
Does that mean that unconditional love doesn't exist from person to person? That's
a really big struggle, because when you look at... I don't think anyone can walk in unconditional love 100% of the time. Does that make sense? I think there have been times where I've done things really unconditionally, like, without even having a single thought about, like, how it will look for me or what I'll get out of it.
Right.
But a lot of the time, if I slow down enough to think of, like, why am I...
There's some sort of transaction.
There's some kind of, like, well, I'm actually doing this because I do hope that there will be this outcome, which is not entirely unconditional.
Right. Not even bad. Like, a lot of a lot of life is so
right, not manipulative.
Right. A lot of life is so in work, get money.
Right.
Scratch back, other back. Like
right.
That helps things move in society.
Right.
So maybe unconditional love is just like reaching for that or hoping for that is hoping for that in moments or hoping for that in stretches.
I think it's an intentional thing, like, right? You have to be aware of the fact that...
Right. That's encouraging to me to think of it in, like, spurts.
Yeah.
Because I can be very binary and, like, does unconditional love exist among humans, yes or no?
Right.
And then it's like, well, maybe no. And then you're like, well, then you start...
I think
people suck, right?
Right.
And
the capacity to love unconditionally, I think,
exists.
It exists
within humans.
Right.
Perfectly, yeah, I think that's
all the time. No,
right.
But
I think that's an encouraging thing.
Right.
Like
that's where, like, people say, right, like, you need to assume that, like, the best in people's actions, like, because there is the potential for people to actually. Because if you didn't believe, like, if we said no, like, not a single person can ever love unconditionally, I'm never going to be able to assume the best out of anything you do for me. Like, you buy me a coffee, I'm going to be like, so what is it that you're waiting for next? Like,
yeah.
You know.
And those people that are like that are the people nobody likes.
Right.
Like the penny counter. Like
the checks in, like, scorekeeping, like, hey, last time I bought dinner, so, yeah, he's paying this time. And, oh, hey, I came over and shoveled your yard, so can you come help me rake leaves? Like,
I remember reading, I can't remember if I was telling you this or I was talking to somebody else about it. But this is one theology book by that Robert Capon guy or whatever.
Okay.
And he talked about, like, sort of like the idea of, like, he was talking about, like, heaven or the afterlife or whatever. And he was talking about, like, the bean counters. Mm-hmm. And he's like, and some people will still be counting beans after all grace and love has been given. You know, those people that are, like, like you're talking about. And about those people are missing out on, like, what grace has to offer. Right. Because grace doesn't count when it doesn't get to the minutia. It says everything is good so we can celebrate. Or it forgives so that we can move on to love. So,
and it's not, and that's also not to say that, like, there's also a level of, like, in relationships, things do have to be reciprocated.
Oh, too, sure.
Right? So, like, it's not to say that if you're a person who's like, I'm in a relationship and I'm super generous and super loving, but I never get any reciprocation from that person, that you can't, like, there's also times where you have to be like, this is unhealthy. I shouldn't be in this relationship because this friendship is, like, given. I give, they take. No give and take.
Right.
But
I think that's the confusing thing, like the fine line for me, because being married or whatever, and being in relationships and saying, like, oh, this is a healthy relationship, this is not a healthy one. You realize that in healthy ones, there are expectations, there are boundaries, and that people are communicative on those, and they work within the boundaries and the expectations. And that someone who has an expectation but never says it and then grows bitter, that's obviously, you could put that under the label of, like, unconditional love. Like, they stay even though, but really, it's dysfunction.
That's that choose discomfort over resentment thing. That's the, like, person's like, yep, I'll do it, but I'm going to resent you for it, and it's going to build up, and it's going to build up. Versus just saying, like, no, I can't do that.
I think maybe that's the problem if you think I have to be in unconditional love 100% of the time. Like,
it's very easy to get, like used by people and to burn out and to...
Right. If I don't say yes, or if I don't ever bring up my own frustrations, that means I'm loving them.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't want to put conditions on it because that's rude or something like that.
Right.
So I think it is healthier. This is healthy me, man. This is like therapy.
Yeah. Lay down on the couch.
It is healthier to just be like, I'm going to strive for moments of unconditional love, or I'm going to be open to the idea of radical forgiveness in situations and of belief that healing can happen and stuff.
Right. I think it's good to, like, check in with yourself on a daily or weekly level and just be like, maybe, like, are the majority of my choices, like, have I been thinking of others more than myself? Or, like,
Right.
have I been doing a good job of, being selfless when I can be, but also not compromising my own needs?
Do you think it's almost better to ask somebody else that
Probably.
you trust?
Yeah, there's probably a few people in your
I feel
life
like I'm
that
a
you should
bad
ask
judge of
that.
myself. I don't know.
Right. See, like, I know. Like, I have been a little too burnt out, and I haven't done the dishes in weeks. Like, like, I know that I probably am not as good. Like, I'm not doing as well.
Yeah.
At, like, choosing, like, okay, I'm going to go do that thing just because it would bless my wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
But I also have that unhealthy thing of, like, when I'm like, oh, I feel like there's the expectation of, like, I should do something that I don't do it.
That's not fun.
No, it's not probably very healthy. Anyways.
Micah mentioned the Matrix. What if this is a simulation?
Oh, it's so weird.
I am not opposed. Okay, so what's that? The verse in Revelation. I will make all things new.
Uh-huh.
And that going along with the idea of, like, reality being like not a simulation, but almost like it doesn't count, is really attractive to me. And if it was just like the end of the world was just like the all divine loving being God or whatever, just being like, okay, that's it. Now everybody gets healed.
So you're saying it's
not,
like
maybe
the
not
dress
magic.
rehearsal. It's like the dress rehearsal for a play. It's like,
right,
we got all dressed up, we're doing this thing, but then at the end it's going to be like, hey, like, good job, everyone tried, everyone played their part.
Some of you failed, and
you forgot to memorize your lines.
Well, I think sometimes I think about, like, the really bad tragedies.
Sure.
And how that would ever make sense. Like, just like how does war, not that I've never been in it and stuff, but how do those things make any sort of sense? The people that die for no meaning, for powerful people's gain.
Right.
Because a lot of people have died.
Yeah.
At the hands of, just...
Right. Just because people, one person has a...
Yeah, because people wanted to take over. I mean, there's, like, injustice. Just the basic problem of injustice.
Yep.
And part of me goes, like, if this is just the Matrix or whatever, and there's just healing on the other side, and we just went, we needed all this because we needed a really good story, and you got to have really low lows to have a good story.
Oh. Huh.
But someday all things will be made whole.
Right.
I think that's...
I mean, that's the hopeful universalist in you, right?
Right.
Like, yeah, the
that
whole
that hasn't gotten me anywhere.
So this happened to me yesterday.
And I don't mean it has to be like magic and like, now everyone's happy and blah, blah,
right.
blah, blah, blah. But like, maybe it would sting less if it wasn't ultimate.
Right.
Like, the person who died at Auschwitz, that wasn't like, and that's your ultimate... Like, that's what happened to you, and that's the only thing...
and lived, and the only reason that you're on this earth, basically...
is because of mental illness in other people's minds.
Was just to die.
Like, I want that to be, like, the bottom of the story, and then it goes back up like a movie, right? Like, right. I want that to be... Right. I want, like, is there a happy ending? And part of me goes, like, well, if we just live in the Matrix, then maybe there's still a happy... Because also some people have really sad endings and some people do have a happy ending. Like there's grandma who lived a great life and had 10 kids and they all had 5 kids. And like she's super happy and she dies peacefully in bed.
Right.
Like then I'm not so like if that happened to everybody, maybe I wouldn't be so worried because I'd be like, look at this.
Can you have a happy ending without terrible things happening? Or is that your point? Like these things kind of had to happen to make a beautiful story.
Right. That's what I'm saying is we need the pain. But the fear is it ends at the pain,
right?
And there's no. And this is because I like stories. Like I just, and maybe we can do the simulation again,
right? Oh, yeah.
But is there a happy heart?
Right. Huh?
does my soul find peace at some point? Is there rest for my soul?
Right. See, the freakier like concept to me is more like the Matrix in terms of like the Truman Show, or like that. Like, am I in this world where there's other people who are just like play actors, like just to kind of like see me fail and like. Have you seen the Truman Show?
Yeah, multiple times.
Yeah, like.
But don't you think? Okay, if we go back to
that kind of Matrix world, like.
But to me, if heaven and hell, God and Satan, and angels and demons exist, then it's true. Then we are in the Truman. Like if that's all real, then we are in the Truman Show.
Except for it's different than the Truman Show in that there's not just one person.
God created the heavens and the earth. That's one. That's like that weird guy with the weird bald guy with glasses.
No, I'm saying though there's not one guy living on the set where everyone else is in on like watching his life, and everyone else has the answers, and he's the one who just has to struggle through it. But it's like we're all on this strange set.
But okay, so right. So there's more Trumans. We're all the Trumans.
We're all Truman.
But let's go. Mike is asking about the spirit realm.
Yeah.
Let's go with this super, not something I believe in, but let's go with this hyper spiritual idea of the world.
Okay.
That there's angels and demons behind every corner.
You don't believe that there's angels and demons?
Not really.
Like at all? There's no spiritual things like.
I'm kind of on that.
Going on.
In my gut. See, that's why I'm worried. I hope I have a spirit, and I'm worried that it's just all in my head and I die.
Oh, man.
Okay, no, I'm worried about that, right?
Yeah.
I don't want that to be true, but part of me goes, even the idea of spirits, it seems like it's all in my head. It seems like it's all encased. There's been times where I believed in them more and less, and felt probably the effect less when I don't. Like, it seems like it could be in my imagination.
Have you ever seen people manifesting demons?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks it's not saying like, oh, it's all in their head.
Like mental illness? Or...
No, like what you would call... this is interesting. Like in a crazy meeting. Yeah. No, I've seen that or whatever.
Yeah, I saw like a 13-year-old kid like pull down his pants and start peeing everywhere when he was getting prayed over.
Right. But like, sometimes you go like, what's the difference between a demon and mental illness? It might feel like a demon. It might feel like if you feel oppressed.
Right.
I'm saying that might be language, depending on how secular or hyper-spiritual a context you come from.
Right.
The same thing might be happening.
But it's also weird, though, because some, like, mental illness doesn't usually, like, just manifest randomly in someone who seems absolutely normal and then, like, is gone. Like, just, like, they're getting prayed over crazy and then potentially, okay, back to normal.
So I've seen some crazy stuff, and you've seen crazy stuff in church meetings. Right. This is the context, just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
In church meetings and different stuff where we have seen spiritual manifestations, both in like positive, seeming like people are having a really good time.
Right.
I have shook on the floor and had holy laughter and felt like God is running through my veins.
Yeah.
And I have done like probably exorcist type stuff where I'm like screaming out a demon or whatever. So like, I don't know how to use language to say what those experiences were.
Right. To quantify them or whatever.
When I believed in that stuff more, I experienced more of that stuff. When I believed that was real, and when I haven't, I've experienced it less. So but
you're also not in spaces where people are right.
You say, I don't go to church anymore. This is what
No, so the weird thing, it's interesting, right? Like the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and I run into this all the time of like just mentality, because you and I have very different perspectives of how we look at things, right? I'm like, even though I have not been praying over someone and seen them healed in years, right? Like, since I have had those experiences, like those will always be enough proof that like God exists,
right,
and that He's doing things, and you're like, that hasn't happened in forever. That was only when I was like looking for it, and did I just like see the things that I wanted to see, and is it actually legit? Like,
or it was real, and I've changed my mindset,
right.
and now I choose not to see it.
Right.
Right. Like, who knows when I was woke? Was I woke then, or was I woke now?
You're swole now.
Right. But what was my point about the hyper spiritual realm, though?
Oh yeah. I mean, we were coming off Matrix.
Oh, Truman Show.
Story. Yeah, Truman Show.
If there are angels and demons around every corner, then they're the actors, and they're the ones pushing and prodding and saying, "Don't go on the plane," and "Do go on the plane," and do whatever.
Right.
And then there's just multiply Truman Show to a way larger scale.
Right.
Where there's 7 billion Trumans, and there's 14 billion demons and 14 billion angels.
Right.
And then there's God and Satan or something. I don't know how Satan. I don't think Satan's in the Truman Show, but.
Well, is the guy sitting up there with the spectacles God, or is he Satan?
We go really dualistic. It's the same guy.
Oh no. Yikes! Yeah.
That's like schizophrenic idea, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like these are the fun conversations, like where you're like, okay, I have to start trying to think through something that I've never really processed through.
So some of this has to do with language. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yes. No.
So it depends what you think of when you think of angels and demons, because some of us, we get drawings in our head. You think of the devil, and you think of a silly dude with horns.
Right.
And you can look into it in the Bible, like if you translate the word Satan, it means the accuser.
Mm-hmm.
So then you could say, like, anytime there's accusation and like someone's accusing somebody else, it's like Jesus said to Peter when he was saying something,
get behind me, Satan.
Get behind me, Satan. Just get behind me, accuser. So anytime anyone's operating in a quote-unquote spirit of accusation, it's the vibe, it's the energy, it's the language where they're towards someone else. They're accusing them. So is Satan a guy with horns, or is Satan the fact that, right? Is he like a being, like a I don't know, like a dog or a bear or like a wolf or something, right? Like physically, like with a heart and lungs that goes around the earth, right? Like, is Satan in Georgia right now, or is he in Iraq, or is he in Brazil or whatever? Right. Or is Satan what humans engage in, this feeling of accusation, which is bringing down the world, because accusation doesn't usually bring life. So Satan brings death, right? So you could go hardcore on the one side of it's a dude in a cape, and you could go hardcore on the other side of just like it's the idea of accusation, or you go, to me, that's a spectrum.
Right.
And then you could go the same with people talk about demonic spirits.
I fundamentally hated that when people are trying to name things like, oh, that person is like has the Jezebel spirit, or that person
they're actually operating an accusation.
Right. It's like, guess what? Like, you don't have to name something. Like,
it gives it a lot of power to name it.
Exactly. Like, you're creating like this fearful, like inquisitive, like curious, like, oh, let's try and figure out what kind of spirit that was. It's like, no, don't name it. They have
a lot of demons in them.
Right. Like, just claim Christ's power and don't, like, okay. It's like rock, paper, scissors. It's like rock beats scissors every single time. So just claim rock. Don't even worry about, like, what's going on with the scissors.
Right.
You know?
Right.
That always bugged me.
Right.
A ton when I was in, like, that Pentecostal culture.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets real sort of cartoony.
Yeah.
And then it's like, is this helpful?
So then you're spending time, like, studying, like, oh, we're going to do a study to try and, like, learn about the different spirits and how they look. And you're like, no.
Sometimes I think Pentecostals are more interested in the dark arts than in the light. I shouldn't say that.
Bunch of wizards.
I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of good Pentecostals that are not into that.
Don't watch Harry Potter because it actually holds all the secrets to what we believe.
And you're like, you're giving it so much more power than it has.
Right. That too. Yeah. Like, just like with Harry Potter and with certain things like that. It's like, do you really believe that like Christ has won, and that we don't have that we have all authority over all demons and spirits and all that because we're like covered by Christ, then why waste a second of your time being like, oh, let's try and look into this and think about it and name spirits. Like, no, you're stupid.
Right.
That might have been a little aggressive, but I still think it's true.
Yeah, let's not apologize for things we actually think.
Yeah.
I don't want to be rude to Pentecostals, though, in general.
No.
I've had great experiences and bad experiences.
It's just like
Pentecostal
trying to name Republicans and Democrats. It's like there's all sides of the spectrum.
It's not helpful,
so
we apologize.
Sorry. Don't be offended. Unless you do waste time naming spirits, then maybe you should get a new perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
The spiritual realm.
So then Micah's last question was technology.
Oh yeah, you wanted to get to this, like pros and cons of modern technology.
Well, I just had this, I've been having this thought. I was talking about it with Haley the other day. Because, so now being in youth ministry and stuff, there's a lot of parents that have iPhone tracking on their kids and all this stuff.
That's weird to me.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to do that to my kids.
No, I would never do that. But I was just thinking about, you establish a culture of distrust if from square one you're like, hey, I'm going to track your stuff. I'm going to look through your phone whenever I want to. You're setting up your kid with this perspective of, my parents don't trust me. They already expect that I'm going to do these things. And that's where you get, into that, law type stuff of, well, if they already expect this of me, then it's just normal for me to do unhealthy, wrong things.
Yeah. Do you think there's a difference between tracking the phone and looking through the phone?
I think it depends. I think that you have to start at a level of trust of, I don't want to have to do this ever.
Never look through? Okay, this is interesting. So you don't think you'll monitor...
My parents never did it.
Okay.
I never... So that's what... It was, so dumbfounding for me with the first people that I found out who, did this. It was, a couple of years ago that I found out about some parents who were doing that with their kids. And I'm just we're it'd be every night or whatever, it'd be hey, let me see your phone. And then they'd, go look through texts or, just, kind of just snoop through the phone. And it's they're only going to hide things.
Right.
Right? If I know, it's if you're on probation, it's if I know at any time somebody might check up on me, it doesn't stop me from doing unhealthy things. It just builds the shame around those unhealthy things.
Right.
And makes sure that I hide them. Right? It's like the saying, hey, you can't date until you're 18, right? Your kid is going to have interest, and then they're going to secretly date, and they're not going to be able to talk to you when they do have questions because there's this shame and there's the secrecy that's wrapped around it.
You could be like me, Dave, and just listen to my parents and not date.
No. I had 13 girlfriends from 4th and 5th grade.
I should have rebelled earlier because then I was 22 and I was like, wait, why am I still
following
all these rules?
But so
I tried to be perfect for a long time.
That's where I struggle is you should start with a level of trust, right? Because don't you want your kid to be able to talk to you and share with you when they do make mistakes? But when you start out right away by laying out all these rules and all these consequences, right. Instead you create this secrecy and this shame, which is where whether you are talking religiously or not, shame and secrecy are never places that healthy things grow, right?
So I'm really tracking with. Oh, sorry.
No.
Okay. No. I'm really tracking with on the not tracking people.
Right. If I'm hey, I'm gonna go to my buddies, and
right.
You're as soon as I leave, you're pulling up your phone, okay, he's driving down that street. Oh, he took a right turn there.
Right.
Where's he going?
Right. Or because I want to do that trust. I think the thing is, I feel like I will want to monitor what my kids to some extent. I'm not saying I'm not going to check every night. I'm not going to read all your text messages. I just wonder if there's some level of monitoring what they do because they have a little internet machine in their pocket.
So
from age 11.
So then the other question is, why would you give somebody something if they're not, like, if you don't trust them to use it appropriately? Don't give them a smartphone, right?
Yeah, but I'm just wondering about the. I just wonder about the way you do it through the. I don't have a kid.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering about the way you do it through the teen years.
Right.
Here's what I wouldn't want. I wouldn't want. Okay, give an 11 or 12 or 13-year-old a smartphone, and you could just get into some really bad stuff probably way too young.
So
I guess there's part of me that
so like if we're talking a boy, right? So you're talking like
boy or girl. I'm just wondering like just the porn available, just all the stuff.
Right.
The relationship. Who are they talking to? I'm just saying.
Right.
To me, I would see about it more monitoring in those early years, less as they get older.
Right.
Less as like I'm not going to go through my 16-year-old daughter's phone and read what you know what I mean. Like I'm just like, but I just wonder on some of those. Okay, here's the internet. We're going to learn how to use this. There's going to be more monitoring right now, and there's going to be more teaching and more like.
See, I would be more of a proponent.
You're at 11 or 12, you're far away from an adult.
Yeah.
You're a lot closer at 15, 16, 17.
Yeah.
Where, okay, well, I don't need to do that anymore. But I think some of those formative teen years, it might not be a bad idea. Just, I'm talking about like safety, like responsibility.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting concept. I think that's a little different than...
So, maybe that's... And I'm not saying like checking it all the time.
Right. See, I would be a proponent for like X3 Watch, which is like if anything that's searched on your Chrome browser.
Just using like technology.
Like, yeah, just using parental controls.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then, like you said, I think there is a healthy level of like, you know, saying, like helping to say, here is this thing called the internet that can be really healthy and can be really destructive. And having those conversations at that young age where you're starting the conversation when it's a curiosity and not when it's an addiction or something that like that right away is shameful. Instead, you're like, hey, like we're going to talk about this stuff right now so that then when you're 15, 16, right, that was
there's going to be more hands off.
Right. Versus starting that at 15, 16 and being like, well, you're definitely already into this stuff. So now we're going to try and create like retroactively set all these restrictions in place. And we're going to do all this stuff that causes you to be more in shame and finding like extra, like you have to work all this much harder to do these unhealthy things.
Right.
So I think that you have a good point of like starting at a really young age with maybe a little more restriction, a little more like, hey, like I'm going to be with you and help you to use like internet and all this technology that we do have in healthy ways.
Yeah.
So that then when you are at that 14, 15, 16, I can give you more freedom and trust that.
Right.
But I mean, like, my kid, until I'm not paying for their phone anymore, like, I would have parental control of, like, you can't search adult stuff, like, things like that, just because I know that is going to be, like, any dude, or I guess not, pretty much any dude is going to have that as a struggle, and so it's, like, I want to set them up for success, like, from square one of, like, these things are just going to be in place, so that then, you know, that curiosity doesn't get, like, the first time that happens, you're like, hey, so, let's talk, like, versus...
Right, start the conversation early.
Right. But, I mean...
So your thought is on the technology, though, is that parents are a little bit maybe...
Yeah, I think that you have to... I think parents are doing that type of stuff more out of, like, okay, fear. I would have done this, right? Like, this, like, fearful and this, well, knowing myself, I would have done this.
Okay, right.
and you're not giving your kid the trust and the chance to make the right decisions.
Right.
So I think it's much healthier to like start at this level of trust, have those real honest conversations about, hey, here's this, like, you're going to have this phone. Here are my expectations. Here's why I don't want these things for you, because they're not healthy, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give you freedom. But then there's the, now if we get to a point where I do have any reason to, like, be worried or concerned, I do have the, you know, like, if I ask you for your phone, like, you are going to need to give it to me, right? And I don't want to get to the point where I can't trust that you're going to your friends.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if I have to, I'll put iPhone tracking on and I'll check, but I don't want to have to do that, so don't make me, you know?
Right.
Because I think that your kids are going to be far more likely to start thinking about, oh, yeah, like, I could leave my phone, you know, at my friend's house right. in his bedroom, and then we can climb out the window and even not do something bad, but it's that rebellious side of all of us of like, you tell me not to do this, I'm going to be like, I'm going to leave my phone and I'm going to go walk around town at 1 a.m. and drink an energy drink. Like,
you're so much more rebellious than me, Dave.
Right. See, that's what I like. I wouldn't actually even necessarily do anything like wrong or that my parents would be concerned about.
You just do something.
I just do it to prove,
edge.
like, hey, like, I can do it. Like, don't tell me, like, don't distrust me. Like, give me trust, because I'm gonna go do things, but they're not gonna be bad things. Like, you've established for me already what you expect and what's healthy and what's not, and trust that I can actually do that versus, like, doing this whole, like, hey, I know I've pounded this in your head, but I still don't trust that you actually know right and wrong. Therefore, I'm going to, like, set all these restrictions and not trust you. But, and it's different case by case.
I feel like I missed the critical period of adolescence.
Well, yeah. It's also interesting, right? Because, like, I think every kid I'm really grateful that I went through my rebellious stage from, like, 12 to 16.
Mm-hmm.
Because
instead of 16,
if I had hit that 19? 16 to 19, or, you know, I probably would have made some way, way, way bigger mistakes.
The things on the buffet would have been more damaging.
Or, yeah, even just the freedom to, like, be able to drive when you're rebellious, like,
right.
You know,
totally.
But, like, I look at my own family, right? Like, everyone's hit their rebellious, like, stages at very different times. Like, I'd say, like, Hannah is in her rebellious stage now. Like,
see, I probably am more, too. I'm probably more like Hannah. Was Hannah like we're talking about that on the podcast, this story.
It's okay. We love her.
We love you,
and rebellious, I don't mean, like bad, evil, but, like, just in the, oh, wait, like, I can make my own decisions.
Are we going to cut this out?
No.
I'm getting nervous.
We can stop. We can move on to another thing, but we can leave that in there.
No, it's okay. We can put it on the internet.
Yeah, it's the last one.
It's the last one.
Let's
talk about Hannah for 20 minutes.
Right, but by rebellious, I don't mean like evil, terrible things. I just mean like that, like, I think when someone first has the realization of like, oh, like, I get to have my thoughts for myself, there's then a period of time where then you start to question everything and you start to be like, okay, like, what do I really think? And that rebellion might not be the perfect term for that, because that infers that, like, you're acting out, but, like,
a period where you go, this is what I think, I'm going to do it. I don't care what the external...
And you're like, I'm going to figure out what I care less about for me.
Yeah, and I care less about the external boundaries right now.
And what others think and all that, because it's about me and
figuring
what I'm...
Yeah, totally.
Right. So, I think everyone hits that at different times. So, if
22.
If your teenager hits that at 16, you might have to parent that differently. But I think overall... if you start at a level of trust, is a way healthier place, because then the goal is you're going to continue to have trust and conversation versus creating like this shame and like secrecy that is necessary for your kid.
Neither of us have teenagers, though. We don't know how hard it is.
I mean, I'm not that far removed from being a teenager, though.
You're still a while. You're still a decade away, aren't you?
No, from being one. Like, I was.
Oh,
you know
okay,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
okay.
I'm looking
Let's
at
establish some authority here. Yeah, we were teenagers not that long ago.
Yeah,
this is how we would have parented ourselves.
I'm just looking at it from like, okay, here's how I was parented.
Yeah.
I had, I mean, I guess. I mean, smartphones are hard, right? Like, I would give my kid a freaking flip phone until they're 15, 16.
Right.
Like, you don't need an iPhone. There's no reason that you need an iPhone.
Podcasts? How are they going to listen to podcasts when they're 12?
Who knows what technology is going to be like when my kid's 12? What the heck? It won't be iPhones anymore. It's going to be
it'll still be iPhones, don't you think?
You're going to have like a chip, and then it's going to like be like a like projected screen with anything that you want.
10 years?
Okay, think about, there weren't iPhones 10 years ago.
When did the iPhone come out?
15? Okay, the first 14?
Maybe 8
yeah, the first
years
iPhone
ago?
was maybe
8 or 9.
8 or 9 years ago, right?
And,
so like you think about...
But have they changed that much, really? Okay, we get it. The capacity's better, the camera's better.
I mean, the AI technology that we're breaking into now, like...
Right.
All that stuff becomes where, like, you have a pair of glasses instead.
The iPhone 1 was the breakthrough, not the iPhone 4 or 7 or 10.
Right. There hasn't been
that fundamentally changed the way we live.
Right.
Was the iPhone 1, right? Or maybe the 3 when everybody started buying it.
Right. Let's say
whichever one where it was like, now it's
right, and where 3G was established, so you actually could surf the internet.
So maybe it wasn't the 1, but I just feel like the last 5 years there hasn't been.
Right. I mean, the breakthroughs have been more like wireless charging and like face scan, like those types of
AirPod. Yeah. I mean, like those are all like incremental.
Right.
Everything's been incremental for the last 7 years.
Right, but it's only 7 years.
Right. Yeah, 10 years could be different. I mean, probably will.
I mean, when you have a kid, it'll be like 20 years. So.
Right, that's who we really got to worry about. My kids. Man. Babies.
Woo!
Aren't kids like not supposed to be in front of screens though and stuff?
Yeah, that's hard too. It's so much more convenient to put your kid just mesmerized in front of a television for hours.
I think I could maybe figure it out for like the first 3 or 4 years.
See, but there's also something of like
within like not at other people's places, but like
right. Yeah.
Like my mom read a ton to me growing up.
Yeah.
And she had time because there wasn't 7 of us.
Yeah.
But I think that really helped. I could read by age 4.
Oh wow.
And I just think it helped me, just like in school and stuff, like how much I was read to.
Right.
And I wasn't really around. I have no idea if that's the reason.
Right.
But like, I think I got a lot of things that probably helped me later on with like a good base and like how many words I heard.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. That's the weird thing with TV. Like, there are things that your kid can learn and benefit from it, though.
Oh, totally.
But
yeah, I say that now. I'm probably gonna hit the kid
You're gonna be like,
in the head with an
I'm
iPad.
done for the day. I want to read a book, which means that you have to be distracted by something else.
Catch this iPad.
Here's the iPad. Go sit in the corner.
Right. Don't talk
watch.
to me.
Go watch Daniel Tiger. All right.
What else?
Parting remarks, Dan.
Oh man, this is the end. I don't want it to.
All good things. Babs start in the kitchen, right?
The thing is like what we're doing right now, we can't do on like a regular basis. Sit in your office. I guess I could. Well,
you can move back to
Morris. I could drive back every Saturday, but Kaylee would hate me.
Move back to Morris.
Work remote.
I know.
Back to Morris.
See, that's the thing is, the podcast is not nearly the same when you're not face to face.
It's so much better.
It's not even nearly as enjoyable.
It's not. Yeah, no, it's not as fun
to be sitting there like trying to talk via computer.
Sometimes it was nice when I was on my porch in Ecuador. I could see
And I was sitting in the winter in Minnesota.
just smoking a cigar.
It's like I'm smoking a cigar. Like,
it's 60 degrees outside.
Inside.
Nice evening. Look at the stars.
Dang.
Yeah, any parting remarks? I just want to thank the listeners.
Yeah.
Anybody who's listened and realized how little planning or preparation we put into this, I'm sure they know. But it's just nice that people have listened.
Right. It's been cool.
I guess we've done the emotional work of being vulnerable on the podcast.
Right.
And
hopefully
that has some value of showing up in some way.
There'll be a few less people who now, know everything about what's going on in my life, and I don't even know who they are.
Right. It's maybe not the worst idea to end it now that you're a youth pastor.
Yeah. Oops.
It's just kind of a public position, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's kind of the nice thing, like working in marketing.
It actually stressed me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Being like, oh yeah, we have this podcast.
There's a lot of recorded audio. We all say dumb things.
Well, or just like, it's a little bit harder to be like, okay, I'm gonna openly be like, okay, I'm not sure about that thing. Because you don't know who's going to listen to it and be judgmental about the fact that you said you didn't know about that thing. It's
or
like... Or
maybe even the way we talked, how freely we talked about...
Right.
We talked about spirituality and we were talking about like a spectrum of what you think a demon is.
Right.
Yeah, and if somebody's like, no, it's right there.
Yeah.
Like, this is what a demon is.
And that person was like, if you don't know that, then...
Right.
How dare you? Like,
and then...
Oops.
Or like...
I mean...
What if it's Narnia and then it's heaven and you're like, sacrilege?
The Roasted Christian podcast killed an entire church. So the power of the podcast... You
can't say that on our podcast, dude! That's not true.
Bobby said it just the other day.
You're outing Bobby.
The Roasted Christian...
That's not what killed that church, is it? We should do a survey of...
I think...
Okay. For everyone who knows, I grew up in that church. I went to that church for 22 years.
I think it elevated a lot of like underlying unhealth, but it was the catalyst, like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think that podcasts do have that power, right? Of like, all it takes is one person to be offended by something said there who has enough influence where it's either you're out or like a group of people are out. You know what I mean?
Dave, I'm impressed with how open you are talking about this on our podcast. Should we talk about MCC ending for the last 15 minutes? I don't want to say.
Sad.
That's the interesting thing, though, with like a church dying. I don't know, maybe there's still people who consider MCC, I don't know if they do a small group or whatever, so maybe there's...
Yeah, I think
somebody could listen and be like, it's not dead, we're just... Yeah. So...
We're taking a new direction.
Publicly seeming dead, is you probably get a bunch of different answers if you asked different people who are both still in, quote unquote, in it or out of it on why.
If your church doesn't have a building, it's not a church. That was very sarcastic in case anyone didn't know.
Okay, that is an interesting thing though, is we love to say church is not a building.
Yeah. But it totally is.
And
kind of.
Church is the people, church is the spiritual body, whatever. But we also live in the United States in 2019. Churches are buildings. As a symbol, right. Which matters, marketing matters. As a symbol, as a place of gathering within our culture, the building is very connected. And the goal could be to be countercultural to that and say that's not true.
You're also you live in Minnesota. You can't have church in a park and just go talk to random people. Like, you have to have an established place.
And there is intention, a long-term vision. Like where there's a building, there's intention and it's actually signs of a lot of really good things and saying we're going to exist. There's stability. Yeah. I'm just saying in the symbolism and the logistics, a building is a pretty good thing.
Yeah. It's kind of like a wedding ring. You're like
showing up on a you choose a day of the week, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whatever you want. Right. A lot of times for people it's Sundays with the way that work schedules work. And you say we're going to meet in this location every week at this time. I feel like that idea maybe has been like, oh, that doesn't like churches. We get it. Churches all the time. Of course, you shouldn't be spiritual for an hour and a half on a Sunday morning. But if you're going to be a community, having an established place that you're going to meet every week that people say we're going to show up, I don't see, that seems good. Yeah,
right. That's not to say it can't be your house.
Right. And that could become rote and people could just show up because they've been doing it for the last 15 years. But I don't know. There's also an element of showing up just because you're committed to the community even if you don't feel like it too. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, work is in a building that you have to show up every day.
It's too bad work isn't not in a building.
Oh, I think better. Sometimes I work from home. I don't know if I like it.
No, it's well, wait till you have a kid. Then you're working from home, but you're not actually working because you can't work when your kid is running around.
Yeah. I just feel like I've worked from home a few times with the winter this year. And as I just feel more alone, I'm like, it feels less real that like someone's going to help me if I have a problem, even though they're on the same I am. Yeah. It just feels like. Any other reasons MCC died?
I was not involved enough.
Man, I gotta talk to Bob at the podcast. I mean, he was the one who got the flack for it. I didn't. I was just a guest twice. It was just fun for me.
Yeah, well.
I listened to the first season. I don't think I listened after that. But I heard about it.
Yeah, it caused a lot of drama, but...
Gosh.
Now Pat is CrossFit.
I saw that.
Lover.
This is just Morris gossip now.
It was awesome. He's like, it's just, you get the community. Like, we're doing Friday Night Lights. Yeah. It's like church. Like, and I agree with it. Like, in a large sense, it's like, you got a bunch of people who are showing up one place to hang out, to challenge each other, and then to, like, just eat food and talk.
Right.
It's sweet.
So in the question of where did the people from MCC go, they went to the Free Church and to CrossFit. That is literally the two other... The church died, and where did they funnel to? The Free Church and the CrossFit Church.
Oh, jeez.
That's true, right?
You can do both. I'm living
and then David, who didn't go to MCC...
Yeah, that's true.
...is... Yeah, you never
that was a different
you never went to MCC, right?
I would never have considered myself an attendee.
Okay.
Like,
I thought you were going to say, I would have never considered myself.
No.
Oh, jeez.
I loved the people. It was not a fit for me.
Right, yeah. It was a very specific fit.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I loved every single person who went there and would love to hang out with their family or whatever, but not ever go there. But.
It's weird not having...
we can't end this podcast because when it ends, it's all over.
I know.
We should have live streamed it so we could just keep going forever.
Right. It's weird though, growing up in a church and it not having a Sunday morning. Did you have that, right? Because you're...
Oh, I've always had a church.
Didn't your dad switch churches?
Well, not when I was... when we were not... When I was 9, we moved from California to Minnesota. But then the church plant was all the way till 3 years ago. So I was out of the house and grown.
Right. Does that feel weird, though, that you can't go back to your church?
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, like, it still exists.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's something I think about every day.
Right.
Oh, it still exists.
It still exists, though.
Your dad's not the pastor.
It'd be totally weird to go because it would be a different pastor. The thing that would be weird there is, right, like... I had this entitlement complex in some way, right? Like, your dad's a pastor, you walk into a church and you're like, this is my church.
Those granola bars are
yeah,
mine.
like, there's a snack, I will eat it. Like, I'll go sit wherever I want, do whatever I want. It would be weird to walk into there because it's like you have no purchase whatsoever. You're just a random attendee.
You just know where the vacuum is. You start grabbing it and cleaning things. You're like, who is this guy?
You're like stacking chairs. They're like, wow, this guy is a servant. I'm like, this is my church.
You're like, this is what I've done my whole life. It's this church.
Yeah. It's normal.
Dude, when you're like 13 in a church is like stacking chairs.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I would be so annoyed. I'd just be like, they'd be like, hey, strong young guys. And you're like, I've complained about this before.
Yeah, and they call, yeah, of course it's like,
look at these
oh,
muscles.
these strapping young men.
Actually, I'm really skinny. Look at, I'm 15. All of you men are larger than me.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Church plant life.
It does.
Something special. That's what, when we, the last place before they got a building was in the movie theater. And we didn't have to set up chairs, and it was like a whole new world.
A whole new world.
Dazzling. All right. It's going to end.
This is the end of the podcast.
This is it. It's been good.
It's been super fun.
Dan and I are going to hang out after this and cry about it.
Yeah.
But it's all good. Thank you for, I mean, honestly though.
Huge thanks to people.
Thanks to anyone who has listened and given us positive feedback, or hopefully like maybe.
One of the fun things about this is not putting pressure on like numbers. So I think it's been a good exercise in starting things and being grateful that 20 people listen.
Right.
And so, some people, some of them have been listened to by way more than 20. But a lot of them probably, 20 to 40 people downloaded or whatever. And so I think that's just been a good exercise of being like, put time into this and we're going to be grateful. Not like,
it's a really
when is this 1,000? When do we get to sell ads? Because it's like...
Right. And it keeps it as fun as like you're just doing it as kind of a chill way to hang out versus making it... Then you have put this pressure on yourself otherwise, and this like anxiety and this, oh, it's not performing. How do I get more people? And then you're that annoying Beachbody coach that's on Facebook trying to spam all your friends about your success stories.
Dude, we could talk about that. There's so many people are bad at... I'm not saying Hannah's bad at it. Shut up, David.
No, I was just laughing
Hannah's
because we
good
were
at
ending. I was just laughing because we were ending, and now we're into ripping on Beachbody.
No.
CrossFit's so much better than Beachbody. Fight me. Just kidding.
I've never done
Beachbody.
Beachbody doesn't look like my type of thing, but for some people it's probably great.
It is, yes.
No, I don't get a lot of requests but my sisters, they're like Vic is like every day somebody's selling me like Herbalife or something.
Apparently there's this like toothpaste that people try and sell. I don't know anyone on Facebook who does, but like Haley and some people have been like, these stupid toothpaste sellers. Hopefully none of our dedicated listeners are a pyramid scheme.
Right.
Oh, you're not supposed to call them pyramid schemes anymore either.
Right. Wait, what are they? Instagram? And,
it's something marketing.
Network marketing?
Something like that, yeah.
Are we still going?
Yeah. Network marketing,
Network marketing.
That's what you call a pyramid scheme in 2019.
No, some people do a really good job and make it like content focused. Like Hannah does that a lot more.
Right. Or just like talking about their lifestyle versus...
Yeah, like some people understand social media, like Hannah. Like I'm just trying to make her not. But some like the people who go into like the DMs, and just straight up sell, or like the person who you haven't talked to for like 9 years, and the first paragraph is like, "Hey, how's it going? What's up?" And then you're like, "Okay." Then the second paragraph,
it's like, and then they won't tell you what it is. They're like, "I have this great new opportunity. I'm going to be a millionaire in 6 months, and you are one of the elite people I've picked to become a millionaire with me. If you just are willing to commit to this."
You know what I really hate, though, is the companies who do that, because they recruit these people to do it, and then it's like, you do all the dirty marketing for us, and it's just got to be a numbers game for them.
I'm having too much fun throwing people under the bus. Those social media people aren't nearly as bad as what Jared Maddox did to me and Gabe, like 2 years ago. Okay. No, this is funny.
Okay.
People are going to laugh at this story.
Okay.
And he knows, because we were mad at him and he knew it. So he knows about this.
Okay. So we can just make it public.
He texts us and is like, hey, we should get coffee or lunch sometime. Like, okay, cool. Set up a time. Go to his house over lunch break. And there's a random old guy there. And they're trying to sign us up for a pyramid scheme.
Oh, no.
Like, he's there to give his whole sales pitch. Like, we go over on lunch break to hang out with a buddy. And then you get an hour long. Like, he's got his projector, and you're just, like, stuck there. Hour long. He's, like, trying to sell you on this pyramid scheme.
Should have chose discomfort over.
I'm just like...
No, I don't.
Oh.
I think I would have sat through that, too.
But it was just, like, not even, hey, I have this opportunity. Would you be interested? No. Let's hang out. You're there. Sucked in. Yeah. Thanks, Jared. I love you.
Oh, gosh.
All right. It has to end.
We got to end it. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Cowboys and Unicorns podcast.
That's Dan.
This is me.
I'm David.
Goodbye.
Bye.